Hey everybody, welcome to the FreeMind Podcast. It's Friday, March 22nd, and we are so excited for the first installment of our expert series. Let's jump right in with Dr. John Burd.
Hi, I'm John Burd. I have a PhD in biochemistry from the University of Wisconsin. I got a bachelor's degree from Purdue and a master's and PhD from the University of Wisconsin. That was a long time ago. I always tell everybody that when I was in graduate school, they didn't offer history because there wasn't any. It was so long ago. But anyway, I'm really glad that I became a biochemist because it's been a really satisfying career for me. I worked, after I left graduate school, I worked for Miles Laboratories, which was acquired by Bayer a long time ago. And while I was at Bayer, there was Miles was the first company that introduced products for people with diabetes. They introduced a urine dipstick for glucose and then a blood test and a meter for that. And they were the leader for a short period of time until LifeScan came in and took all the business away with their one-touch glucose system. So anyway, I left Miles and went to California to work for a little startup in the 80s that had a blood allergy testing product, massed immunosystems. And that's where I learned about the business of medicine, because we had a blood allergy test, but we could not get it reimbursed because insurance companies always sent the claims to their allergist, who was their consultant, and they would always say, oh, it's experimental, it doesn't work, blah, 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 which was total bogus. But anyway, that made me realize how important getting insurance reimbursement is for a product. So anyway, I was there for about from 83 to 87, and I joined a company called Quidel in San Diego. And Quidel had products for the home, doctor's office, and clinical lab. And the main products were pregnancy and ovulation tests for home use. And Becton Dickinson was the distributor for that product for us. And that went fine. And then I decided to go off on my own in the late 80s and started a company called Lexen, LXN. And we had a home test that had two tests. It was called the Duet. And it had a glucose test strip, and it also had a test strip for fructosamine, which fructosamine is in serum. It gives you your average blood sugar over the previous week or two. The test that doctors use is called the A1C test, and that gives you your average over the previous couple of months. But anyway, we raised some money and got the company going and got the product approved by the FDA, cleared by the FDA. But we ran out of money and ended up selling it to Johnson & Johnson, at which point I joined a little startup venture capital firm here in San Diego called Windermere Venture Partners. And I was there from 99 to 2004, I guess, or something like that. And during that period, we started about 20 different companies. And when we did put money into a company, we always insisted that one of our partners get involved in the management. And we knew we wanted to do something in diabetes space because it's such a big market and people are eager for new things there. And that's where I found the technology that became Dexcom. And Dexcom means dextrose communication. And that was technology that came from a little laboratory in Madison, Wisconsin, where I got my PhD, just as an aside. But I always like to say that our first international headquarters at Dexcom was in the basement of a dentist's office in Madison. So I hired a few people from California to come out there to pull the product or technology out of the university. And now it's here in San Diego, and it's got thousands of employees and millions of people using that product. I'm sure you're aware of it. And it's helping millions of people around the world better manage their blood sugar. Well, in 2009, I had a motorcycle accident and I was in a coma for a month and broke my pelvis. So when I woke up, I always tell people that I felt like I'd left Shangri-La, because before the accident, I felt like a 30-year-old. But I woke up with my broken pelvis and my subdural hematoma, I realized I wasn't a young man anymore. So I was kind of into forced retirement for a few years. And then I got really bored with that, and I started looking at some products for the dialysis market. And I would always send them to Dr. Stuart Updike, who's a nephrologist and a co-founder of Dexcom. And whenever I sent them, and I would send these dialysis products to, there's only two companies that control that market, DaVita and Fresenius. And whenever I sent the idea to them and to Dr. Updike, I'd always get the same response. It'll never get reimbursed. Everything's fine, So when I got an email from Dr. Updike, he said, "Why don't you work on something important like glucose toxicity?" And I'd never heard that term before, but now I know. I'm an expert. I know exactly what it is. And when I looked at it, I realized that I could help. I solved that problem with glucose toxicity. And what glucose toxicity is we need glucose every day for the energy that we use, but it's also toxic. It's like a reactive chemical, like cyanide in our blood. And it reacts chemically with all the proteins in our eyes and our nerve endings and our kidneys and our blood vessels. Everywhere there's a protein, glucose wants to react with it to form what's called glycated proteins. And I realized that I could stop that reaction with lysine. So I did a bunch of Google research to, that glycated proteins and stuff. And I realized that if I had lysine, and put that in the bloodstream, that the glucose could then react with lysine instead of the proteins. And when it reacted with the lysine, it formed glycated lysine, which you just excrete in the urine. And glucose is, our kidneys hold glucose in, they don't let it out. But glycated lysine passes right out. And I did an experiment on myself where I took lysine and I looked at the fructosamine, which is a glycated protein in urine. And sure enough, the levels went way up when I took lysine. So that it did get into my bloodstream and it did react with glucose and excreted it out. But also realized that I couldn't start a business with just lysine, because you can buy lysine at your grocery store or drugstore right now. So I did more research and I looked at other compounds that could be used in a supplement to help with blood sugar. And that's where I came up with the formulation in 2017. And basically the formulation has lysine, zinc, and vitamin C. All three are important. Zinc is important for insulin function, and vitamin C is good for many, many things, as it's a very popular supplement. So anyway, I've contacted my attorney and we filed patents, 7 of which have now issued. So we have 7 patents on Lysulin. And I contacted contract manufacturers and I found one that would make me tablets. And we launched that product in 2018. It was the fastest product development I've ever been involved with, because we didn't have to get FDA clearance. With supplements, the FDA just reviews your labeling and then that's it. So it's not FDA cleared or anything, but they've looked over our label. We actually had a problem with the FDA a couple of years ago, and we were on target for $1 million in sales until September, when we got a warning letter from the FDA that said we were making drug claims. So we reacted to that letter and have changed our labeling. And they sent us a letter that said that issue is resolved. So if you go Google Lysulin, you might find that FDA warning letter. Well, that's been resolved. But when they sent that letter, immediately Amazon and Walmart.com kicked us off their sites, which was half of our business. So we didn't make $1 million, and we struggled, and we still we got blackballed basically by Amazon. So we've had to go through heroic methods to get back on. That heroic method is actually, we started a subsidiary company called Delmar Health and renamed the product, calling it Enable instead of Lysulin. And we changed the label so that we no longer say it's for nutritional supplement for people with diabetes and prediabetes. We just say it's useful for helping with blood sugar and insulin function. And that met the muster of the FDA. So we're all squared away there. And that was a relief getting the FDA out of that resolved on our label. So we basically have been, as I said, we started with the tablets, and they were big tablets. I mean, they were about that big. So we basically, once people said that they hated those big horse pills, we came up with a chewable tablet, and we now have the Lysulin is available in several forms. It's available as a chewable berry flavored tablet. It tastes pretty good. And we also have capsules. If you get those tablets or capsules, you have to take 6 a day, which is a lot. So I came up with a once a day powder, which you just have to take once a day. And it's a little scoop of water and of powder and water. And it tastes like salty lemonade. And we also just launched a weight loss shake that contains Lysulin. So you get weight loss and diabetes management all in one. So that's really great. And in addition, so this is what a bottle of Lysulin looks like, and all the products are good for a month. And we also sell a home test for A1C, and you can tell if Lysulin is working or not working by using A1C before you start. A month later, test yourself again, and your A1C should drop in a month. And we did clinical studies with type 2 diabetes and prediabetes, and a fabulous study with the prediabetes that showed that Lysulin, improved A1C in as little as 1 month, and it also helped with insulin function. So all of our claims are backed up with the published clinical studies. And that's the story on Lysulin. And I mean, I'm basically struggling. Our sales, I don't have money for our sales force, so we do everything online. I've got digital consultants that help me with marketing, but so far they're not paying the bills. So every month I'm writing checks to keep the company going, and I'm desperate to find investors as well. And I'm amazed that people that made so much money on Dexcom after it went public, it's valued today at $40 billion market cap. So people that invested early made a fortune, but they don't have a shekel to throw my way for either of my new projects, which is disheartening and really painful. So anyway, we're hoping this year to go to get $1 million in sales. When we do that, we'll be cash flow positive, EBITDA positive. So we're hoping by the end of the year, we'll be EBITDA positive, and next year for the whole year, we'll be EBITDA positive. So that's the scoop on Lysulin. And I said,
excellent. But just talk to me a little bit about for my personal family is directly. My grandfather has struggled with diabetes his entire life, and my uncle had passed away from mismanagement of diabetes and such. So it's definitely a personal thing for me, and that's one of the reasons that I had reached out to you when I had seen what your work was and what your story was. So I really appreciate you sharing that, and talk a little bit about as balancing the science world and the entrepreneur world, how that tightrope as management of those as a brand manager and owner and founder and inventor. How do you manage the business and the science and all those things together?
Well, the science has to be there and has to be proven with clinical studies. So I've done that. Then the business basically just needs investment. So for 4 years, I've been keeping 2 companies going on my own nickel, and that my pot's getting pretty close to dry, as my wife reminds me about every other day. So it's really a challenge. I mean, if you want to start a company, there's really 3 or 4 things you need. You need a good idea, and if possible, patents on that idea. And you need to go for a large market, which diabetes has got, 30 million people in the United States alone and 300 million worldwide. And you have to be able to make it at a reasonable price and sell it. So that's really all you need to start a company. And as I said, when I was at Windermere, we started 20 companies, and several of them were like Dexcom, were pretty successful. So obviously some of them weren't. I mean, with startups, oftentimes they just vanish because you don't meet your objectives or you can't find investors. So, I mean, it's really disheartening to me that I can't find investors, because I would hate for Lysulin not to be not available, because it's such a great product. It works so well for people to use it. I get these testimonials from people all the time about how happy they are with the product and how grateful they are to have it available to them.
Out of curiosity, what is the challenge getting the word out to the investors, or are you getting direct feedback from the investors? How is it that things aren't connecting there as far as that goes?
Well, with the supplement, I get basically there's 3 or 4 excuses that they use. One is that they don't have any money, that they're just using their money to keep their current projects alive and going. Second thing is they don't know anything about supplements, so they're concerned about that they don't know the business. And the third thing is FDA concerns, and we've taken that one off the list. So, but it's basically they all claim that they don't have any money, so they're just keeping it under the mattress. And I know a lot of people in that venture capital world, because I've raised myself over $100 million in the last decade. So it's not like I don't have connections. I have connections. They're just asleep.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. What about talk a little bit about Wonder Spray?
Oh, I'd love to. Wonder Spray is here's the bottle, Dr. Bird's Wonder Spray. And Wonder Spray, I got, when I launched Lysulin, I went to LinkedIn, and everybody I could find that had diabetes in their profile, I sent them an introduction to the product. And one of the people that responded, who really liked the story, was a Dr. Mark Hinkes, who's a podiatrist. And he published a little blurb about how I solved the problem of glycated proteins. And during our discussions, he told me about a product called the Ultra Mist, which is a little handheld wand that uses ultrasound to generate a mist that you spray on a wound, and it kills bacteria. And from my days in graduate school, I knew we used ultrasound to open up bacterial cell walls. So I contacted the manufacturer, and the CEO there was a Russian engineer. And I said, "How much does this Ultra Mist product cost?" And he said, $30,000. And I said, "Oh, no wonder nobody knows about it." I said, "How about you and I make a little miniature nebulizer and use it with ultrasound to generate a mist and kill bacteria and help a lot of people to better health?" And he said, "No, I have no interest. I got 50 patents and it would cost too much money." I said, "Okay, fine." Well, a week or two later, he emailed me and said, "For $3.5 million, I'll give you non-exclusive rights to one of my patents." I said, "Well, I don't have $3.5 million, so that's out. But how about I'll pay for the development of a prototype. We both sell it, and we'll pay you your $3.5 million on royalties of sales." He says, "No, I'm not interested. I never heard of anybody using royalties to pay for a license," which is what everybody uses to pay for a license. So he was just out to lunch. So I went to, from there, I went to Alibaba, and I'm looking for my little nebulizer. I found a little nebulizer on Alibaba. Here it is. And I sent this little nebulizer up to a bacteriology lab in Orange County and said, "Use saline and see if it kills gram-positive and negative bacteria." Well, 2 weeks later, I got some bad news and some good news. The bad news was they said it didn't kill anything. It's just too weak. The ultrasound is too weak. So I said, "Oh, that's too bad." But the same day, I got an email from a wound healing group that I belong to. This was an introduction to HOCl, hypochlorous acid. As it turns out, HOCl, that's a very is the compound that our white blood cells use to kill all germs, bacteria, virus, yeast, mold, and fungus. It kills COVID-19, HIV, you name it, it kills it. And it's totally safe and non-toxic. We all have it in our bloodstream right now. So I contacted some manufacturers and I ordered some, and I sent some back to the lab up in Orange County. And I said, here, try this and see if it kills anything. Well, a week later, they said in less than 15 seconds, it's 100% knockout of everything we've tested. So I contacted the manufacturer and I said, how do you sell this product? And they said, well, we sell through McKesson primarily to doctors. And I said, well, there's a beating your head against the wall. I said, how about if I sign up to sell it direct to consumers? And they said, okay. So we signed an agreement, and that's how Wonder Spray began. So now we have Wonder Spray. It's available in little 2-ounce bottles and 8-ounce bottles. But we also sell the nebulizer. See if I can get it going. Yeah, can you see it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's going there. So you can actually use that to get it down into your lungs. And we also sell fogger, which you can put Wonder Spray in to fog the room to disinfect it. It's a really great disinfectant and deodorizer. So if something stinks, it's because there's bacteria around. So basically, it's also actually great for allergy symptoms. As it turns out, it stops mast cell degranulation, which releases histamine, which is why you have to take antihistamines. So it's good for so many things. People can't believe it. The good news is it's good for so many things. The bad news is nobody can believe it's good for so many things. But there again, so I launched that a year after I launched Lysulin, and we've been selling that again through digital consultants. And Lysulin, I didn't mention, is available now at CVS and Walmart, as well as on their websites. And Wonder Spray is available primarily through our website. It's called drbirdwonderspray.com. It's funny, if you Google Wonder Spray, it takes you they got the domain name. So when I started the company, I got the domain I got was thewonderspray.com, because Wonder Spray was taken, and it was taken by a company that sells a little handheld bidet. So it's funny because in their videos, they've got a guy like you with a full beard eating cake and stuff. And he says, you can't get this off just by wiping it with paper. So it shows him using that bidet-like thing to get the cake off of his face. But Wonder Spray does a much better job at deodorizing and disinfecting than anything else. So, and again, I can't find investors for it, but it's basically the company is just me and a warehouse person to help me just, take orders and stuff. It's available on Amazon and Walmart.com as well. But there again, I'm just struggling to find customers and investors. So
are your digital consultants provide generating leads and how are they going about promoting your product for you digitally?
They all make the same huge claims about all the things they're going to do for you, and they cost a fortune. Like a couple of years ago, I spent almost $300,000 on this group, and they didn't sell a single bottle. They recommended we change the name from Wonder Spray to Dr. Bird's Wonder Spray, so we did that. So maybe that'll help. I don't know. People like to see a doctor involved, even though I'm not a PhD or not an MD. I'm a PhD. So again, we have great testimonials and great word of mouth, people telling people about it, and that's I wish it would grow faster. So hopefully these podcasts like this will help.
Talk a little bit about I want to kind of step inside your brain a little bit because of the amount of things that have churned through there, the amount of innovations, the amount of creative things that have gone through, your balance of creativity and science. Talk about your internal process and how you go from, let's say, the bar napkin concept all the way through your trial and error and running through the science and running through the trials until the execution. What walk me through what it's like to be in your shoes.
Yeah, I think I sent you a link to my book, which is on Lysulin, which is the natural solution to the diabetes epidemic, the discovery of Lysulin. So a lot of that detail is in there about how that came about. But basically, I just looking to find, big ideas that for big markets that have patents. And another guy that I met on LinkedIn has a company like Dexcom. It's called Allergy, Alertgy, and they've got a non-invasive, like a wrist band that uses radio wave technology and dielectric spectroscopy to measure glucose in your bloodstream. And they're just struggling because they can't find investors, which is amazing because we all know what a big market that continuous glucose market is. So I actually invested a little bit of money in his company a couple of years ago. I went down to visit him in Florida, and he had a prototype at that point, and we ran a glucose tracking study on me and compared it to a blood finger stick, and it correlated pretty well. So I said, it looks like you're off to the races. I'll put a little bit of money in. And I was on the board there, but they've gone through board grief. And, whenever things don't go perfectly, the board, what the first thing the board does, right? Fire the CEO. Yeah. So that's what and I'm used to wearing the hat of the development guy. And once we get to market, have somebody that knows how to market products take over. And both of my companies, I'd be happy to have somebody come in and acquire them. And since we have so little revenue, I wouldn't probably get my money back. But nonetheless, I'm just interested in keeping these products alive because they're such useful products. So, Wonder Spray kills COVID-19, but did you know that?
I did not know that.
Does. So
when you are setting up these different things, and walk me through kind of currently what you're doing now. Currently, you're out of the startup, the phasing of conceiving these products. Now it's the executing and the growing. What's a daily process now with cultivation and management of the businesses? I assume you have multiple entities and they're all under one.
Well, basically every day for me is first thing I do is get on my computer and answer about 20 emails from people wanting to sell me SEO and want to redesign my website and all that. So I get rid of all those. And then every once in a while I find somebody like you that may actually be able to help me. And I've done several of these podcast type interviews. So, and oftentimes they lead to sales. So again, I spend time talking to customers and talking to my CFO, who's also the chief operating officer. He's a great guy. We've worked together in the past. And he basically, he's the one that got the CVS deal and the Walmart deal put together. So he did a great job on that. And we're in 750 CVS stores, and I hope we can get into all, thousands of them in the United States. I've also got another consultant helping me get into Canada. And hopefully next month, April, I expect to get an order from Rexall up in a drugstore up in Canada. So they used to be in the United States, but I guess they're just now in Canada. And McKesson actually owns them. So McKesson does distribution to several businesses there. So I'm hoping it'll lead to some serious sales coming soon this year.
Yeah, it's so during COVID, I had to pivot from my traditional sales in alcohol and food and beverage when all the contracts died. Exactly, we're sitting here now, March 15th, 2024. It was exactly however many years ago today we got the phone calls that all the bars closed. So my whole business was to zero. And overnight, I pivoted with the distillery down the street, and we started commercially under the World Health Organization, commercially producing hand sanitizer in the beginning, which very quickly, within 30 days, we did all the webinars and certifications, learned everything. So then we had 250-gallon totes shipped in of pure 200 proof ethanol, and we were popping and making all the things through. And we had a chemical company come in to sign off on our formula. So I had a very amateur style 30-day run through the fire of trial and error. And what I can say is it then led into me realizing that my life wasn't just in alcohol, and I had more that I could offer the world. And I quickly, during that 30-day period of us producing that, creating the business, and then literally distributing it nationally, it spawned off into an entire PPE portfolio for myself of testing, the gloves, the masks, and everything like that. So I ended up funding the state of Delaware during COVID with all the necessities that they needed, as well as a healthcare network up in Montana and a few other ones around the area. So I overnight had to learn basically cold calling pharmacies around the country. So
that's work, because you can't get a pharmacist to talk to you.
So that's where my creativity came in. And I can tell you what, when it was the hardest out of all my years of selling into liquor stores and bars and restaurants, I thought they were tough. And pharmacists were very hard to get a hold of. But just like what you're saying here, once they realized that I had a brain in my head and I was actually there to help them, and that we were going to together, work on this, the phone calls never stopped. And it was a good 2-year run of just absolute chaos. And
selling ethanol.
I sold the sanitizer, gloves, masks, and everything, all remotely. So I literally was in my basement and I was just dialing 250 calls a day, every day. I had email. I was doing copy and paste on the emails, and I was just introducing myself to hundreds of people a day. Wow. And I was just so the goal was just whatever happens, happens. And because I was self-employed and I didn't fall into any of that PPP money either. So I had no option. I have kids and a house and everything like that. Kind of like, with everything you've been doing over the past few years, what would you say is kind of advice for younger entrepreneurs that are just getting started in the science world, that maybe they want a patent and they want to have a business within the world of science and healthcare? Would you say your number one recommendation is understanding the financial piece and how much money it takes to get through that? Is that kind of, or what would you say overall is kind of things to like slap them in the face with reality for a second kind of thing? Yeah.
Well, again, it's just find a unique product that goes to a big market and try to line up some investors. And again, I don't come from a wealthy family, so I don't have friends and family that have a lot of money. I mean, I've got one friend that I've worked with at Quidel that put some money into Lysulin in the beginning, and I had hoped that he would be able to help me because he's also raised a lot of money for startups, but he couldn't find anybody to help with that either. So anyway, if you can line up, just know that it's going to cost, a lot. As you know from your experience, it costs a lot of money to get the product made and find customers and ship it and package it and ship it to them. So it's not cheap. So
as far as the last question I have for you, the last question, John, is as far as the future holds, kind of with all your experience in the current and the past, where do you see these emerging technologies and things like that? Do you see things getting accelerated? Kind of what is your vision of the next 5 to 10 years and 15 years and beyond? Kind of, I know it's a loaded question, but choose whichever kind of bracket of timeline. Yeah.
Well, I keep hoping that people in the government would wake up to the fact that type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle disease. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease, and there's not much you can do about that other than manage it with the continuous glucose monitor and low carb diet. But type 2 diabetes, we could wipe that off the face of the earth if people would just get off that stupid meal pyramid that the government publishes. It continues to publish that, recommends high carb, low fat diet. It's just upside down. If you want to get rid of diabetes, get low carb, high protein, high fat diet will do it. And again, with a supplement like Lysulin, that will help you. And with a home test for A1C, you can tell how well you're doing. And people often ask, well, we'll have to take Lysulin for the rest of our life. And I always say, well, no, if you actually get down your A1C down to normal levels, like in the low 5s, you can actually go from 3 servings a day to 2 servings a day. And if it still stays down, as you can tell by measuring A1C, if it stays down, go from 2 to 1, and eventually go from 1 to 0, and just keep monitoring your A1C. And if it starts to creep up, start Lysulin again. So that's also good. Whereas insulin, once you start on insulin, you're on a one-way street to drug addiction, because you're becoming insulin addict, where it takes more and more and it works less and less well because of the fact that the glucose in your blood doesn't work as well. So I don't know we never know what's gonna bring. I mean, who would have predicted that the internet would change our life so dramatically? Other than Al Gore, I guess he knew, but what else is there going to be? It's like, that's the other thing about money raising. There seems to be a lot of money out there for apps, but not for products like I have. So you never know what the future will bring. I just hope it brings better health and longer life to humanity. So.
Well, excellent. Well, John, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you carving out the time. Anything else you would like to share with their audience?
No, if they, my email is jbird@jfbird.com. And if people get a hold of me, I'd be happy to send samples of Lysulin and Wonder Spray to people if they want to try it. I'd rather have it in people's hands than sitting in a warehouse.
So here, thank you very much for your time, and I'll be in touch in the next hour here.
Thanks, Nate. I really appreciate your help.
You take care. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Transform your weight loss management with Lysulin. Discover the natural way to maintain healthy blood sugar levels and support your body's insulin function. Say goodbye to worries and hello to a healthier you with Lysulin. Try it now.